I believe in brands and people's stories, and I feel like, I'm put here in the world to help them tell better stories, and that's my mission and my purpose in life at the moment.
Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, hello! Welcome back to Perception Paradox. My name is Živile, and today we have a long-awaited part 2 with Forest Bakker. Forest Bakker, professional athlete turned entrepreneur, where we're gonna dive more actually into his growth mindset, into his identity, leadership style, and more practically into the storytelling itself, because that's a real craft of his. So yeah, enjoy. This is part 2 with Forest, and if you haven't listened yet to the first one, just go back and you're gonna find it. Are we filming? Are we on?
We're on.
Amazing. Have it. Actually, you know what some people told me after one of the last sessions I moderated in the large stage in the conference in Riga? I've got I've been listening to your panel and I got so inspired. I was like, about the content or what? And I said, because it felt like we're in the living room. So welcome to my living room.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Welcome, Forest,
there's
again.
nowhere like the living room, That's where
Yeah.
conversations happen.
Exactly. So welcome back, Forest. Good to have you here again. It's been not too long.
I know. It's good to be here back with the part 2. And I think we had a pretty interesting conversation last time.
Yeah.
We're just getting heated up, and in certain subjects. So it's nice to be back and dive deeper.
Yeah, totally happy that we managed to find the time and the space for that again. And great background. Still, Alfie's and his friends, Alfie, the horse, is supporting us all the time. But we covered a lot in the part 1 and the first conversation about your very interesting and diverse experience, right? From the pro high-performing athlete to business owner, to the freelancer business owner, then the startup co-founder. And it's pretty interesting because it's kind of wearing multiple hats.
It is.
How did your understanding of self as a concept, self-identity has evolved through the years? And
we're starting deep, huh?
I just really, because we covered all the soft questions, so that was one of those questions I wanted to really dig deeper.
I think your sense of discovery, your sense of self, at least for me, it has so you really discover who you are when you start doing the things that you're uncomfortable doing, I think, and that has really shaped my path and the way that I was able to somehow overcome that fear and go through with it. That's when you're at a state where you really figure out how do you approach certain problems. And I think that's also the birth of confidence in a way, at least for me. So yeah, I would say that sense of self comes a lot from trying new things, exposing yourself to new experiences, as we discussed in the last conversation, and then just going for it, and then obviously you have to fail again. I'm pretty sure this is a well-known concept now, how to iterate on your life. But yeah, I think just going through countless failures, but also stepping out of my comfort zone, you start really building and understanding a little bit who you are. And I think it's very important to have a bit of an, you want to pay attention and want to be an observer in all these experiences, because they'll help you understand how you overcome certain things or how you're dealing with, your experiences, and that in exchange shapes a little bit that person and who you are.
Do you think when we kind of going into these new challenges and reshaping our identity, do we have to leave something behind, or we kind of bring the old identity and we try to merge with future self? How did that?
Yeah. I think sometimes so I'm sure there's like certain parts of our identity that we just want to leave behind, but that have helped us become who we are afterwards. No, so I think it's more like a learning, like those things that we leave behind. They're more like learnings that you take on with you for the rest of your life, and failures usually should happen like once. Like if you like same mistakes, should happen only once, and that's how I think that you progress with a consistent. You progress consistently when part of your identity has made you fall into a bit of a failure. Then you're like, okay, I learned either it's the good way or the bad way, but failure is also something that you overcome, and then I think that those are the things of your identity that you leave behind. They're learning,
sure.
right? So I think maybe that's like a concept where we can wrap our heads around with is, okay, so part of our identity when we're failing, leave that behind, but what we take with us is the learning from that failure. So nothing is like good or bad, in the end it's just there's one way of succeeding, and yeah. I don't know if that made sense.
I think it does make sense. I like the way you put into the frame there is nothing good or bad. It's just some kind of learning, and and it's a lot about the perspective and how do we actually observe things and which part do we choose to see it from, which angle. And sometimes when we get the failure or we make a mistake, well, if we don't really learn from that, we're just going to repeat itself. And like exactly. It's like a loop. So
yeah,
it's
and more so if it's part of your identity. Because if it's part of who you are, in a way, it's hard not to fail again through your way of reacting to a certain situation. So I think that's where you need to be very observant of what's happening, so that you don't do that mistake twice. And for someone like me that I've learned through doing, I've gone through a lot of these different I went through this process like countless times, so I think I maybe like awoken a bit of a part in me that is able to observe and to learn quickly, kind of like when you iterate on a product or on an app. It's really a process of just being aware and and making sure that you analyze the situation and ask yourself if the reason you failed is because of the way you are approaching something, and just leaving yourself a little bit from like seeing things from an outside perspective. I think that's super important, to leave your ego behind.
Ego.
And then and then,
Ryan
push
Holiday said
through,
Ryan Holiday said ego is your biggest enemy.
It is, yeah, it is because if you don't leave your ego behind, then you won't learn, you fall into the same traps and the same mistakes. So we all have an ego, and it's important to have one too. I think that's like part of ambition and like achieving new things is you got to have a certain ego to achieve the greatness of life. But you also need to know how to leave your ego behind sometimes, just to be a little bit more vulnerable, and let other experiences kind of like come in and be open to failure and how that's
very interesting. Two things you mentioned, ego and failure, right? So I have two follow-up questions. One of them, how did you learn to accept failure and take it as a learning rather than just a bunch of emotions that just stops your progression? Because we're afraid to fail, and it takes us time to really get kind of familiar and safe when it comes to failing. Well, it's never safe, but we kind of gain more practice, courage, and the way you right now are describing the failure, like, we have to observe, learn, it's already very mature. It seems like you've been through a lot of it. Yeah. Maybe you can share.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but I've been through a lot of failures. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, by the way, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's, if you fail, you got to fail a lot and quickly, in a way. When I say quickly, is that you need to be, like we said, like aware of where the failure is and where it started. And usually it's very easy to lose confidence when you're failing, because you're like, okay, am I not prepared for this. Most cases you're not, like spoiler alert, but I think it's important to, if you shift your mindset and your perspective on that failure, and you go with more of a learning and a growth mindset towards that failure, in exchange it gives you like that confidence, because it gives you a bit of a safety net, and you know that your brain is almost programmed, if you're failing, to be quick at realizing that you're failing. So it gives you that confidence again, that to go and take more risks, so it's almost like a framework. That's why they say you gotta fail again, and you gotta fail quickly. If you do that, then you develop, like if you do that with a growth mindset, then you develop a bit of that that confidence, that that you can fall onto a net, but then you have your experience and your what you've observed to take you on to the next step. So I think it's kind of like this. It's funny. It's like it's almost like a cycle, like it's
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's also failure is like a muscle in a way that
it is like muscle.
You kind of, the more you fail, the easier it becomes to fail for you, and you start looking a lot of opportunities and learnings out of that. And I don't know, you just get this whole mind map opening up for you once you first take that first step. Okay, I'm gonna try, I'm gonna fail, and choosing your risk awareness, how much you're willing to.
Exactly, and
lose.
Like diving a bit into that, it's just recently that mind map that we talk about, that I've started to really understand how that mind map works, and how I'm able to pinpoint like different areas of that mind map, and I'm starting to feel how I can really connect all of those areas of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because before, sometimes you just you go and that's the like the way of going, like doing and learning, but it takes some time just so that your brain kind of starts molding and shaping into something that you can access quickly and know, like it's I mean, when you're young, it takes a bit of time to develop that those connections. So basically what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to be afraid to go through, and we gotta trust that things will start making sense as we go, because if not, then people lose themselves way too quickly. And if you trust a bit of that process, and if you have the right growth mindset, and if you fail and you learn, and then you start developing also that confidence, then one day suddenly you're just gonna feel like, okay, well, I have this like good mind map of different directions that I've taken, and it kind of subconsciously lives within you.
For sure.
So I think that's something that's good to be aware of, that it happens, at some point you just start clicking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, but it's a lot of things that lies in our subconscious mind, and especially unconscious mind, that we're not aware of if we don't try to open it up. What is your relationship with visualization?
Yeah.
Have you done that before? Like, for example, learning a new trick and so on?
Yeah.
That's what I remember from all the sports. Like, I would always first visualize, and then I would go to do the 360 or 540 from the kicker or something, and then would be just automatic.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I just listened to a podcast the other day from Dr. Huberman, who we love. And I don't know if it was his podcast or another interview, but they were talking about the power of visualization, and it's something I've been doing. Like, it's something I was doing my whole life when I was a professional athlete, in a state where I was like, about to sleep or about to wake up in that morning. I'll take some seconds when I'm in that state just to visualize things, and that's when I would really feel it, like a full body feel of how the trick would feel. Okay. And that's how I'd visualize it. And I've taken that skill with me with other things. So I'm just trying really to feel like in those states when you're, in a meditative, like very deep kind of like almost like dreaming, but you're still conscious. And you sometimes have, like, it has worked a lot with me, and what they say in this podcast is that when you visualize something so vividly that you almost embody that feeling, that's when you start, when your body starts building a little bit towards that that goal or that vision you've had. So yeah, something I've definitely taken with me, and it's very powerful. And I mean, at least for me, it has worked a lot. So yeah.
Cool. There is, I mentioned to you this one doctor, Mr. James Doty. He just released the book about mind-body connection, and everyone who wants to learn more about how the neurons works in the mind and all the manifestation, visualization, how it helps actually to achieve goals and just to, I don't know, be a good human being and live in the environment that you can thrive. So that's a very good book to have a look into.
Yeah, I'll look into
and
it.
He's amazing.
Good.
Yeah, but cool. So you touch base a bit also on kitesurfing, on this visualization, how it helps you right now in business. I'm a huge fan of it. I think it helps everywhere. It sets your mind to the right direction.
It does.
But I'm very curious also to learn more about your transition across different chapters of your life.
Okay.
Because when it comes to your professional career, being an athlete in such sport as kitesurfing can be very lonely, and it's kind of a more like a solo journey. You might have a team for your branding, coaches, etc., but you are the one who has to perform the tricks. You are the one responsible. Yes, there are external conditions like wind we can maybe hear right now, but at the end of the day, you are the one. But then you come to the business.
Yeah.
And it's a team sport, right?
Is, yeah.
How is it for you shifting the mindset from solo to the team sport?
Yeah, no, that's it wasn't easy, and I've had a few discussions with my partners because of it, because I come from eventually like a more solo sport, and I had to almost take care of everything myself. Because kitesurfing is not a really big sport, so I had to do my own branding. I did have a coach, but I had to do my own training. I had to push myself to, become the best. And yeah, it does feel quite lonely. I think it also has given me like some confidence that I'm able, whatever I set my mind to, I'm capable of doing. And something I repeat myself like constantly, still to this day. That I'm capable of anything I set my mind to, and I think it's a good mantra to take with you. But eventually then you start transitioning. So LightBros I started as a freelancer, so I was still doing things solo. And you feel like you have a control of everything. So you kind of feel like in peace in a way with that, because you know that, things are going the way you want them to go. But then being a leader in a company is completely different. So you start learning how to explain certain things so people understand your vision. And I think that was the biggest transition that I had to take, stepping into a leadership role. I'm still learning to this day. I'm far from perfect. I'm far from a perfect leader, but I think it really comes down to knowing how to put complicated concepts together and kind of explain them in a simple way so that your team feels that they have the understanding and then the support as well to achieve the goals of the company. And it wasn't easy for me actually to go through that, because it made a lot of sense in my mind, and I would sometimes think that whatever I was doing or explaining, everyone else had to understand it in the same way I did. But it's very far from that. So you start learning how how everyone perceives things in a different way, and how you need to understand each person and each character that's working in your team, and then see how you can explain something so that they can start understanding and executing on that vision. And then also it's also about listening to the input, and if you do explain something in a clear way, then other people are able to add upon that idea, and then much smarter people as well are able to make something much bigger from it. So I think that transition was like pretty interesting to shift my mindset into, okay, how can I now take a role where I need to take the time to sit down, explain, be there, show by doing, and it's almost like being more of a coach, to your team.
There is that connection.
So it's it was it has made me into a better person for sure as well, because as you say, kiting is very solo. It's your world, it's you against the world in a way. So
and the nature. With the nature, actually, again.
No, with nature, yeah. You have to learn how to play with nature. And when you're kitesurfing, it's the embodiment of that wind, ocean, waves. But yeah, and then, your mind and how And something funny, sorry, going back to
Go ahead.
kitesurfing is an unpredictable sport. Okay, so it's like this is an example I usually use when you do in other sports, like even snowboarding, skiing, skateboarding, motocrossing, whatever. Your body kind of adapts to the speed and to how you're approaching like a jump. Okay, I mean it could be windy and sometimes you'd have to play with that, but in kitesurfing, conditions are very unpredictable. You're kiting on a ocean of different waves. None of the takeoffs and none of the landings are the same. So your body kind of has to learn how to adapt in these like really quick situations because the wind can be gusty. You can be jumping, you can be thinking. So I think our bodies when we kite surf kind of learn how to play with the unpredictable elements of nature. So that's a pretty interesting concept as well. I think that comes from kitesurfing. Yeah.
I think it's a huge learning from such sports.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to the resiliency, and you just keep trying things because you try once and then the conditions just keep changing and be never the same. So you need to be fast and agile.
Yeah.
I think that really helps a lot. Have you ever doubted about your leadership skills?
Oh yeah, I have, and recently as well. You have to go through those doubts, I think.
How do you approach them?
So when I have doubts, now I'm communicating a lot more with my team. I think communication is key. Anything can be solved, with a good conversation. So yeah, whenever I feel doubt, again, something that when I was feeling doubt in my kitesurfing career, which was very solo driven, and was like me and my thoughts alone, So here it's really about sitting down with the team and understanding like if there's something that I'm doing or reacting that I'm not aware of, and just having a bit of a sense and a pulse of who you are, and then also trying to expose myself to the team when I feel mentally at my best. It's good to be vulnerable, but I think in a way I always try to every morning have like a good reset, meditate a little bit, and try to be the best version of myself, so that I can be open and be secure about how I approach things. So I think that's also a good way of approaching
morning routines and grounding yourself
for good days, and then because even if you're in doubt, you still have that you can still take care of yourself, and then in exchange makes you feel better and be a better person for your team as well. Yeah,
very healthy approach, I would say.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, like when we feel good, then the rest around us feels way better, even in the worst. So we can approach it in a way better situation. Okay, so during your whole career, you've been changing also roles, freelancing, then getting the partner to your company, different, I assume, leadership roles as well. And your recent role is creative strategist, right? Does it mean like more from hands-on, you go more into the strategic now approach? Or how did that evolve, and what you've been up to actually?
So creative strategist is a role that has evolved now with the digital landscape. It's an intersection between brand strategy that has more to do with the vision, the why, the what, and the how. And then an intersection between brand strategy and communication strategy. And this lives in the middle. And basically what it is, it's how do you create a cohesive plan to communicate across all the different touch points of a brand, and how do you keep that brand alive through socials or through anything that you can consume, and how do you make a brand feel lively, and that could be with video, with podcast, with documentaries. How do you really create a brand that feels almost like a friend? And in the past there wouldn't be a creative strategy because it would just be like one specific asset that you would communicate through one specific channel. But now you really need to connect all the different aspects and all the touch points so that the story that you're telling is cohesive, and that it's also it has the language of each of the platforms in which the story is living. So it needs to adapt as well, based a little bit on the people that are on certain platforms or what people expect from those platforms. It's a bit more technical. I think creative strategist is a role as well that I've developed with my experience in different industries and areas. It's really about connecting dots, which we touched on in the last conversation we had. And I've I didn't really know what my role was. I was the founder of the company, co-founder of the company together with Fran, and I did creative direction. I've been directing shoots. I've been producing. So I think this has been like the role actually that has defined a little bit all the different skill sets that I'm able to do into one specific role, which is a way of understanding all the different areas and how we can make the most out of these things. And something cool with creative strategist as well, is that you think about a production in a different way as other people would. So you think of a production more as an experience and how you can make the most out of that production or that content opportunity that you have, and how you can have all these different perspectives within a production so that you know that you're communicating on all the channels that you need to communicate through. So that could, like in practice, that could mean having a production like the one we did for Porsche, and I'm going to put a bit of a case study here. The one we did with Porsche, with Liam, he's a kite surfer. We did that here in Tarifa. So it's really about, making something that feels more like a real adventure. So this is branded content. But then we invited a content creator and influencers to this production. And whilst we were shooting, we had other people also creating content on their own. So you really maximize the experience so that you can communicate through all the different channels. And so it's a good way of, maximizing the budget, the production, and getting all these different perspectives and point of view so that the story is told cohesively across different channels.
Amazing. And when you start building some kind of story for a client, where do you begin actually? Where does that narrative start?
So, there's many different ways. Our way, the LightBros Way, since we like to base our things on like more humane, more real experiences, it always starts observing, understanding. Like first it starts actually understanding the audience that you're looking for the brand. So really try to understand the situations that they might be in when they're consuming the content, the person, their experience. So understanding the target, and then observing the experience that the brand provides. So then you can have a product which is the experience, such as an electric surfboard that we've been working with, or a Porsche car. That's the experience. Or you can have brands that are part of an experience, like a sunscreen. You take in a sunscreen and it's part of something that you want to do. You're adding that sunscreen just to protect you throughout that experience. So it's really about understanding how the brand belongs and then seeing how we can tell the story of that brand through a real experience. So that's how we usually approach it. Then really based on the product, you always have to try to find certain emotions that you want to convey throughout that experience. So it could be like excitement. It could be a sense of curiosity. It could be surprise. It could be something fun and happy that makes you laugh. So it really depends a little bit, but you always want to try to understand what is the emotion. But the cool thing of like a real experience is that the person that is living, like, could be like the athlete, the celebrity, the actor, whoever is living that experience. If you're making a real experience, the emotions that he's going to be living are real, and people feel that across their screens whenever they're watching this content. So I think that's our approach, the way we usually do it.
I love it. I love when like the brands become real and you can really connect with them through the content. And you've been in the industry for quite many years, right? From being yourself someone who puts out own brand to creating those stories for other brands as well. How did this whole landscape evolve in a way you can reach the audience right now? Because we've got, of course, more social media channels coming in. The attention span became way shorter. Yeah. How do you succeed in reaching the audience? What would be those key components for successful actually story? So, there's a few
tactics or techniques that we employ. If you watch Mr. Beast content, you understand how to keep people's attention throughout like a video. I think Mr. Beast is the master at employing these techniques. But basically, you usually start with a hook. So if it's like short form content, you want to start with something that grabs your attention like really quick. Then once you have their attention, then you want to create other hooks, which are throughout the story. You want to be using like phrases like but, therefore, so that this kind of leads into the next like shot and in the next chapter, so it keeps people engaged in the content. And you need to add in some emotion as well to the content that you're showing. So anything that has like, you know, real and strong emotions will keep people hooked. But this is more like the techniques just to like grab people's attention. Okay, now we're jumping more into the world of storytelling and how people when they're watching a piece of content, how they feel fulfilled by what they've watched. So this has to do with, you know, explaining your main stories, or as we said before, like experiences where people can actually learn or get inspired or motivated by. I think that's where it's going on. If you're just going to scroll on Instagram and on TikTok these days, you can see how that starts shifting, because people have taken a lot more of an edutainment approach to content, where you explain something, but you explain it in a fun way, and then all the, you know, posing and all these pictures that we used to see across our channels, those are like mostly done because we obviously want a bit more, and I think people are slowly becoming aware of the time they're spending consuming useless content, you know. And I think there's a bit of a shift. I'm hoping there will be, but yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question. But
It does. It does in a way. Like it really showcases the landscape.
yeah.
Do you have any most memorable or maybe complex campaign you've done when it comes to production and story? What would be?
Okay, so this was back in the pandemic, 2020.
Okay.
So we get a call from this agency, and they have a DJ. So the whole concept of this production was for Lexus, so it's a car brand, and they had these hybrid cars, so they wanted to create a sustainable branded content series. So we thought of mixing. They had this DJ called Wally Lopez. He was a brand ambassador for that car brand. So these were the ingredients we had. Okay, sustainable. We had the car, which is a hybrid car, a branded content series that they wanted to do, and what could we create that would connect all these ingredients into like a nice piece of content. So we thought of, okay, you know, I know Tarifa, I know the wind. It'll be cool to mix the elements and maybe get a DJ strapping on the top of a windmill, a wind turbine, one of these windmills. One of these windmills, and connect his DJ equipment to the energy of the windmill.
Like for real, okay.
For real, and then perform a 1 hour live set filmed with FPV drones.
Epic.
That was the concept, okay?
Okay.
Then the client he loved the idea, and then they had an additional idea, was to do this with 10 cars, so not one car. They wanted 10 cars, and they wanted the 10 cars to be around the wind turbine and like perfectly synced with the lights while the DJ is like DJing. So that happened, and then so we started planning. It was a lot harder to get the permissions as we expected to be able to film on top of a wind turbine. So much so that we had a place in Tarifa, actually just next door to where we are now. And the day before the shoot, so the whole shoot was going around, you know, having this DJ performing a set on the top of the wind turbine. This DJ comes down with his family to Tarifa because this is like a one in a lifetime experience. And as we're coming down, the person that had rented us the windmill, the wind turbine, disappears and doesn't get back to our messages. Nothing. It was a bit of a dodgy situation, but we'd spend maybe like 2 months trying to find a wind turbine, and this person had like a private one. So, I mean, imagine we had to call the client, tell them whilst all the cars were coming, because it's 10 cars, 10 like just released brand new cars. They don't have these 10 cars in one place. They had them scattered in different locations in Spain. So we had
to Tarifa,
and coming to Tarifa, which is the southeast point of Europe.
Yeah.
So we had like all these cars that came to Madrid into a truck, and then from the truck down to Tarifa. And as everything was coming down, and as we were traveling down, they cancelled us the wind turbine. So we had to adapt really quickly. I was actually in London shooting something else. So then my partner calls me. He's like, listen, this happened. And yeah, we're like, fuck, okay, what do we do now? So we called the client. The client cannot cancel the shoot, obviously, because we had everything set it up. So they're like, okay, yeah, you guys come up with a additional alternative plan, and we'll just have to shoot the wind turbine another day somewhere else. So we're like, okay, yeah, perfect. So whilst I'm traveling in the plane, I put, a new shoot plan, so that we can adapt the shoot a little bit. Everyone is a little bit disappointed, as you can imagine, but yeah, we came down to Tarifa, and we decided to connect the DJ equipment to a wind turbine, but the DJ was going to be below the wind turbine, and then the cars would still be around him and still DJ. But then that was done. It actually was a pretty good success, and we had to find a wind turbine now, which ended up being even more complicated. So this was in the middle of the pandemic. We had to shoot. So I think we shot this in May, and we had to release the documentary end of June. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's very tight.
Yeah, very tight. So, and it was the middle of the pandemic, so everything was it was super hard to organize anything. Imagine the world was closed. So my partner, who used to work in a renewable energy company, starts making phone calls, and we had two options. One, going to Ukraine and being able to shoot there, or going to Mexico, in the middle of fucking nowhere, dangerous area of Mexico, and shoot the DJ performing on the top of that wind turbine. The Ukrainian option was a no-go because they only had availability for us to go there in August. We had no other option. We decided to go to Mexico, but we needed to do like a 5-day course, like a heights course, just to get the permits and the safety course to go climb the wind turbine. So we got our content creator to do that together with the DJ. And then, yeah, we had a drone pilot, one of the best ones in the world, that traveled with us. We were going to Mexico. He had like all his drones strapped to his back. We were going there for 2 days, and it was more than 24-hour trip just to get to the wind turbine. We shot what we needed to shoot there, and then we wrapped everything up. We were in the most dodgy place. We had like security, everything. It was insane. We got stopped so many times by different controls. Yeah, because it was pandemic. Like, imagine Mexico in the middle of nowhere. Like, they would see us with all these drones. It was insane. So yeah, very hectic, intense, but we made it happen. That's our slogan, actually. We make it happen.
You make it happen.
We make it happen. And yeah, long story short, it turned out to be a good success.
Cool.
But we had to adapt, and yeah.
Great pivot. Yeah, and you still made it, actually, with the whole turbine flying to Mexico and during pandemic.
Yeah, it was fun as well. But it's one of those, when you work in production and you're working with very short, with time constraints, you gotta. It's almost like when you're working with these short time constraints, sometimes it even helps get things across, and this is something that we're just applying to our team as well. The more time you give someone to do something, usually they just find a way to take that time, okay? So you need to be fair and you need to be balanced, but we're employing a lot of time constraints, money constraints as well, to come up with, certain break through in creative ideas. And I think that's where, good creativity lies, is when you're able to constrain a certain idea or the possibilities, then you find really interesting solutions to that. So that's also an interesting thing. Like whenever, you have a presentation or a pitch, we always think, okay, let's do it in like 2 days or 3 days, depending on the complexity, instead of taking like 2 weeks, because then we're going to be fully focused and invested, and we'll make sure to have something that is solid and that works. Because then when you start overthinking and you have more time, things tend to get a lot more complicated.
And you get starting into this perfectionism, which does not actually exist anymore. You need to do, try, see, edit, tweak, and everything changes anywhere on the set. Not everything, but things change. But okay, we just got a quite interesting case study shared. But I'm very curious to see how do you see the failure when it comes to the campaigns, because that could have been considered also failure. You could not execute the plan. I see it as a success because you pivoted, and it might have ended up being even a better case than you planned initially. But when did you start understanding that maybe failure? Did you have some kind of specific failure in your life where you realized failure is an opportunity rather than just something you care with it?
I'm trying to think of a moment.
Not necessarily. Maybe how did your understanding about failure change? Maybe there was some kind of other campaign or some kind of situation in life where you just realized, no, it's not how you should react into failure.
Yeah, I think coming up with more so with the idea and the ambition to start like a new company, the startup, whilst LightBros was growing, could have been considered like a failure in a way, because the company had suffered quite a lot. It was maybe not the right decision. Failures just come down to be decisions that you make that aren't the ones that you're supposed to make. But in the end, I think something that we've been pretty good at doing is, even though there's a failure, it's how do you adapt that failure to become a bit of a success afterwards, and kind of like bounce back throughout that failure and using the opportunity to make something new out of it. So I think it's it gives you like a path, so you can take like one direction or another, but then you can branch out. So whatever direction you take, then in the end you have like branches, and you can start going through and try to make your way around something else. So I think failure helps you navigate situations that maybe you wouldn't even have been exposed to, and then you have to make it work, because you don't want to, if you fail, like we've never really had like a failure where we're like, okay, this is like done, caput, finito, like we cannot go through with this. We've always tried to find like a way to make it work somehow. So yeah, it's, at least with us, like it hasn't really become, and maybe we should have said just like no and move on. Maybe wasted quite a lot of time. So that could have been seen as a failure, but somehow we've always tried to make it work regardless of the decision we've taken. And yeah, I'm thinking now that maybe we should have done it differently, but
you still have time. So far, it seems like you're growing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it has to do with the growing, So it's just, okay, whatever. This was a bad decision, but how can we turn it around and make it into a good one? That's how we usually approach it.
Okay, so and how do you combine two roles, creative strategist and product developer? You're doing the product in the startup, right?
Yeah. So I'm doing more product design now. I'm head of product, but it's more focused on how people will experience the product itself. It goes with the time. So, so in startups, you have certain phases of a product.
Cycles and phases.
So I just make sure that, I'm involved in the meetings that I need to be involved, and that I get the information of the customer and of our clients who are using the product. So I'm trying to do that on a weekly, almost daily basis, a feel for it. But then there's certain phases. So when we jump into a product phase, I just make sure that I'm a bit focused in that period of time. We have a good product manager. Well, actually, we have a product marketing manager, which is this new like evolution. Airbnb actually employed that as well. And it's nice because it gets us to connect a bit, and we're able to have a better perspective on the growth of the product and how that is then translated as well within the product itself. So this is how we work with it. So I just make sure that the team, whenever I need to be involved in product, they give me enough time just to prepare whatever I have in LightBros, and that I can jump into it.
Cool.
It's not the perfect way of doing it, but I'm able to kind of set my mind to a certain thing and shift between one area or another, depending on the phase that we are in. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. I have one more question about actually storytelling and this whole branding and creativity concept, because when you were sharing one of the cases, you mentioned brand strategist, right? Then we have a strong focus nowadays on brands having the story.
Yeah.
How do you see this whole shift happening with the personal branding, company branding, and I don't know, founders of the startups becoming the main kind of characters of their brand? Do you have any insights from what's happening when it comes to personal brands connecting with the company brands? Is it a great opportunity? Is it a risk? Is it like...
It's an amazing opportunity. I think it has to do with the content strategy, and the founder story should be like a specific pillar within that content strategy. And it has to do that people relate and they follow something. People follow something that they can relate to. And the founder's journey usually is the more humane journey that people want to follow. And it's a great opportunity as well to give valuable information. So I think we're shifting, the world, the society is shifting a bit into a more entrepreneurial mindset. So people want to consume content and stories of the founder on how he's achieving, his brand, his product, how he's making it happen. And in exchange, what you get is loyalty as well from your, possible consumer that's consuming your content and then wants to try out the product because they're invested in your story, in your life. So I think it's a great opportunity for companies to really, include the founders or the people that are working in the company and that are making the decisions for that company, that they're able to show a little bit their experience and to showcase it with the world. And then in exchange, you're going to get a loyal fan base of people that are just inspired by your journey, and that becomes part of the brand as well.
Totally. Yourself, as a founder, as a storyteller, what would be your advice for someone who is building right now the company and has a limited amount of resources? Where do we start with the story?
Limited amount of resources, and how would you
a new company, new startup or business, and kind of, yes, they understand that it's important, but they're focused on the product. How can they, with minimum effort, start their brand?
So start if you have a specific idea. So if you don't have a specific idea, what I'll do is get exposed to different experiences. It doesn't mean that you need to go travel the world if you don't have the money to do so. It can just be going, in your street, in your neighborhood, and start just listening to people, what they're talking about. Just get very interested, get involved, focus, and try to get all that data and that information with you. Then once you have an idea of something that we'd like to build and like a certain interest that has like grown, then talk to people about that idea, get information and feedback on how that idea feels, and if it's a big yes or a big no. Once you have that information and you start, and people will add on to that idea, and it will start living and brewing inside of you, and it's just gonna be inevitable for you just to go out and try to create it. And then the way to create it is, today, if you have a phone, a computer, it's you can basically do anything you can set your mind to. So today what I'll do is go on ChatGPT and start having a conversation about your idea, start putting a plan together, talk about different business plans and frameworks that you can employ. And that whole process, you're going to start learning so much about, what it is even just to get started with an idea. So I think it's really about being invested and having the interest to just go and pursue it. And then along the way, you're just going to find, you're going to start connecting all these dots as we discussed. And this is how I started. And I think I recommend anyone that wants to start something to do it like that too. Yeah.
What a great tip. So one of the first times we met now here in Tarifa, we exchanged a bit about the books. And you mentioned this 365 daily laws, right? And I started reading it a bit. And one of the first things the author asked So what you have to find, or you should find your kind of life task, kind of life mission. Have you managed to find yours?
Yeah. It's I would say it's just I believe in brands and people's stories, and I feel like I'm put here in the world to help them tell better stories, and that's my mission and my purpose in life at the moment.
Nothing to add.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you would like still to share with?
No, I think we went through basically everything. What's the maybe what's the next step in your podcast? Where do you want to take this?
Okay, so so we are reversing now, right? So I guess the next step is actually creating the framework that, because this whole podcast was born from this idea that I get access to so many incredible people, experiences, and sometimes that one experience and hearing that story that can resonate to you would be this final trigger point for you to really make the move. So after this inspiring through podcasts and stories, launching now the YouTube so people also can see it, my next step would be for this whole podcast and perception paradox community would be the framework to take action. So how can we actually, from inspiration, move to action? Some kind of framework, guide, toolkit to really make it happen.
Yeah.
And I guess since it's a focus is designing the life you want, designing your true authentic self. So that would be around that.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a work in progress. But yeah, because from inspiration we need to still take the action. As human beings, we're lazy. So I think that will be the next step for that. Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant way to approach it. Eventually now people, I think they want to listen to actionable advice that they can just take in their day-to-day and start practicing it, put it in motion. And it's nice to think about it as a framework, because a framework, what it does, it gives you like a set of intentions, but then it's still authentic to everyone's journey. It's not like a method, or like a theory, which is very like rigid.
For sure.
I think this will help, more. So it's a beautiful mission. I like it.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for joining. So final question, I guess, where can people follow your journey if they want to?
So we're talking about founders' journeys. I'm not living to that. To that. I'm too busy helping other people and other brands tell their stories. But no, they can follow me on Instagram, Forest Bakker with 2 Ks, and same on LinkedIn.
Cool.
And if anyone has a specific question, if they feel like they want to dive deeper into a topic, then please, send it across, and I'm happy to get back and
amazing
dive into a conversation.
I'll put all the links in the description. But yes, thank you for joining for part 2, and till next time, I guess. And thank you everyone for listening. Ciao.
Thank you.
Yay!
Nice.